action movie. I'm the Lethal Mullet. And welcome to Lethal Mullet Podcast, live here on Phantom Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam O'Brien. And today we are on episode number 78 here, celebrating the life of Sean Connery with the sci-fi actioner western. That is, of course, the amazing Outland. Joining me here to celebrate the life of Sean Connery and, of course, the life of this movie is your dear pal, the co-host of Blood of Kings, founder, along with Kyle, of Phantom Podcast Network, all-around amazing fan of the Las Vegas Raiders, and let's just say a dear pal, the one, the only, Kevin, the RaiderNerd. Right, so, buddy, how are you?
Hey, man, good to talk to you again. I always love podcasting with you. Good to see you. Good to hear you, man. How are you?
Yeah, really good. We are sweltering here in the Aussie heat, chilling back with a Canadian club as we speak with the nice...
And things are getting colder for us right now. You're going into your winter... Yeah, we're going into our winter. You're going into your summer. It's so funny.
It's bizarre, isn't it? I've got to say, though, we are enjoying getting back into shirts and T-shirts, and you guys are getting rugged up again, ready for winter.
Yeah.
As a Raider fan, is it easier to have the winter season to put all the gear on? Because, I mean, there's a lot of jackets and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to bundle up a little bit, and it's become my the fall and winter has become a little bit more fun for me as I get older, because I look forward to that season. But it's nice to put on some jacket and sweatshirts and that type of thing, so yeah.
Nice. And you've got to say that Kevin is in the nicest place in the US. You're in Santa Barbara, which is in California, and I think it gets cold, but not that cold.
No, it has the best all year round weather and one of the best cities in the States for that. So we're very spoiled here. We start complaining when it gets too chilly, and other people. I used to live in Georgia where it got colder, but in other parts of the country it gets even a lot colder, and so we're kind of spoiled out here.
Nice. And just off air, we're just talking about a brand new set of shows, folks, the Phantom Podcast Network's doing on the YouTube channel. So if you haven't subscribed to that, do that. We'll tell you a little bit more about that in the context soon. But I've got to say, one of the big things that people have always wanted was video, and now you guys are doing it. And it's a lot of audience involvement too now in the Phantom show, End Zone in particular, on video.
Yeah, one of the things we wanted to do was not only just get to YouTube where we could put our audio podcast, but also have some exclusive content as well. And we've moved our NFL football, our American football podcast, The End Zone, exclusively to YouTube. But we also wanted to try something new. And now with the help of Dan Hadley, our host of the Doctor Who Type 40 podcast, he wanted to have a show that was about once a month, just called The Fandom Show, where we have a round table of fans talking about what's popular with fandom. And we just recorded our second episode as of this recording here in the middle of November. And, we're going to have some other stuff too. And we'll do some, like we've done some exclusive Couch Potato Theaters for the YouTube channel. We got another one coming up for the holidays. We're going to be doing Scrooged.
That's right. And they just did a very, very interesting, but I've got to say it was pretty dreadful episode of Couch Potato. Now, of course, I'm saying dread because it was full of dread. 2012. Wow.
Yeah, that was a fun one to do. Our friend of the show, Christy Morris, her husband, Michael Morris, also are close personal friends of mine from Georgia. And they're both big fans in their own right, and they're both podcasters in their own right. And I've been wanting to get her on, and one of her choices was Dread. And we're like, we're doing it. Perfect.
And of course,
great movie. Great movie.
It is. And of course, Michael's a big Star Wars fan, friend of Fantha Tracks, along with, of course, Christy's actually involved in Fantha Tracks, actually, for those that don't know. She does some stuff there. But what's great about it is, I'm pretty sure he has the Mando cast, if I remember right.
Yes, so he has the Mando cast, which is currently, of course, celebrating the episodes each week coming out for The Mandalorian. He also had, I think he still has it, Cloud City Casino, where he talks about Star Wars gaming. He's been a little less active with that and more with the Mando cast. But he's done a lot of podcasting in his right. And I've actually done some Dungeons and Dragons with them at their own house as well, with their wonderful dog there. So, yeah. Susie? who's it? I can't remember their dog's name. It was really cute. But anyway, yeah. But I'll be visiting them when I go back to Georgia for Thanksgiving.
Nice, nice. Now, for folks that don't know where Georgia is, it's in the south, I believe. Is it right on the east
towards
coast?
east. It's the East Coast and the South. Yeah, just above Florida.
Nice. Kind of, actually, folks, if you're in Australia, you'll kind of know that it's almost the same as where Sydney and all that is on that coastline, because that's the southeast coast of Australia.
Yeah, if you were to put the United States right over Australia, that's approximately where it would be. Yeah.
Nice. Now, obviously, you've been doing a lot of that with and that going on, and obviously with Enzo, we've seen that the Raiders have been coming to form. Tell us a little bit about how the team's going and latest wins.
They're halfway through the season now. They are 5-3, and the home stadium is brand new in Las Vegas. This is their inaugural season, 2020. Of course, because of COVID, no fans are allowed in the stadium right now. But I have visited Vegas for the first home game where they played the Saints, and I did get to go to the stadium, just not inside of it all the way. But I had a great time in Vegas. But when I go back to Georgia visiting friends and family, I will actually be going to the Atlanta Falcons Stadium, because the Raiders are going to be visiting. So I will see a game in person. I'll be watching my beloved Raiders play the Falcons.
Excellent. So you actually get to see a game. That's really good, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. And I've got to say, like with COVID goings on here in Australia, we've been told at the end of November things are actually opening up state to state. We may even be letting those Mexicans down in Victoria out of their little cage. That's right. It might be happening. So, Aaron, if you're listening tonight, the news is good, at least up here in Queensland. Things are opening up. So hopefully, let's just hope the frickin' borders will open up, because we need that damn RaiderNerd fella over here on a plane as soon as possible.
Tell me about it. We're trying to find a window. She just went back to work, which is good because she's a fitness instructor, and so she's been able to go back to work on a limited basis. But borders are looking kind of sketchy still. We don't know when that's going to happen, so we can finally reschedule our postponed wedding.
That's right, mate. I wish you two all the best, and hopefully the cards are in there soon for you guys, because I know it must be hard on you guys doing that, mate. All of us here at FPN wish you all the best for that.
Thank you, sir.
So here tonight we are going to be celebrating the life of Sean Connery. Now, before we get into heavy, obviously there's been some sad news in the past week and a half. Sean Connery has passed away at the age of 90. He's left to the mortal coil. From all reports, obviously 90 years old, he's had a great life. Last few years, unfortunately, he has not been in the best of health. So even his family have said, it's kind of it's a blessing that he's put aside the pain and stuff like that was going. But mate, we've got a huge career here that we're going to be covering in certain episodes of Lethal. Others will be in, obviously, Couch Potato Theatre and other podcasts. On this channel, you will see, obviously, Outland. We're also going to be doing Hunt for Red October here soon with Lee Fillingsness. And Kyle is still, I think he's still trying to figure out what he wants to do. League of was possibly the one. Sean Connery's last appearance on screen, which was an interesting one, considering he went fisticuffs with the director. And
yeah, that movie, when it first came out, I remember seeing it, and all my friends, we didn't really care for it, but I've actually gone back to it, and I actually really enjoy it now, and he's great in that. And unfortunately, it was not a good experience for him, as you've mentioned. He and the director did not get along, famously, unfortunately, but he's really good in that, and that movie for me actually is aging better than I thought it would.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It was at the tip of when CGI was really getting beyond, well, as you say, sketchy. It was definitely that before it. But things like Jekyll and Hyde getting done and stuff. But I think what's interesting is, if you get a chance, guys, listen to the commentary on that, because the actors in there had so much fun with Sean. It was more the director that he had conflict with. The actors love it, and Sean is somebody that always paid out love and affection and money, I've got to say, to his crew and his cast, and looked after them with dinners and all that sort of stuff. So he's somebody that really was the man when it came down to it. So tonight we're going to be talking about that, but before we get into that, we have to talk about, of course, we're going to have to talk about contacts here now, and let you know how you can find the show here on, of course, the only Fandom Podcast Network.
The new number is...
G'day, man, how you going? Follow the Lethal Mullet here. on Fandom Podcast Network's master channel at fpnet.podbean.com or subscribe on the Podbean app where you can find all the shows. Blood of Kings, a Highlander podcast. Culture Clash, a weekly look at pop culture. You look at Making Treks, a Star Trek fan podcast. You can also check out The Mullet Guild, a look at the Dune universe from me, the Lethal Mullet. You can also check out this show and all the others like What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast, Type 40, a Doctor Who podcast, Good Evening, an Alfred Hitchcock podcast, and much, much more. All on FPN. You can follow on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and all podcatchers. Make sure you follow me, the Lethal Mullet, at The Lethal Mullet on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Now it's time for the latest action news from the cinema and martial arts movies and more, all here on the Lethal Mullet podcast. Alright folks, we're going to head into the news quickly, and of course, the highlight of the news obviously is the sad news, the passing of Sir Sean Connery, the original James Bond, amazing actor, known as Thomas Connery originally, and of course, the stage name of Sean. And of course, he was one of those that started in a lot of those World War II films and in the 1960s, and then of course got the eponymous role of James Bond 007. And then of course, from there, became a household name. It's sad news. Kev, where did you find out the news?
Oh gosh, I want to say someone probably within the Highlander group posted something. I don't know if it was on Highlander Heart or another page, and then I double checked to see if it was not one of those stupid hoaxes, and then I saw it on Facebook and other social media. Yeah.
Sad news. I mean, Highlander is one of probably the most sought-after roles that he had, of course, of playing the amazing Ramirez. But I mean, there's so many others. Obviously, you know, his role in Hunt for Red October, his role in Untouchables, which won him an Academy Award. What to you was the role, apart from Ramirez, I know you love his work on that, but what's his most famous role that you love?
Yeah, I think the Highlander movie was the one I remember him from the most, but I probably saw him in a Bond film, but he didn't resonate with me as Bond yet because I didn't really go back to appreciate those, even though they were playing all the time on television. I was more of a Roger Moore guy when he was doing his run, but for Sean Connery, I would have to say it was a cross between Indiana Jones's father, Henry Jones, in the Last Crusade, that one, and of course the Hunt for Red October, along with Untouchables. It was like because he was on a hot run during that time, and you know, those were the ones really that I think that cemented my fandom for him personally outside of Highlander. But you know, I think my favorite role outside of Highlander is probably as Henry Jones Sr. because he was playing a little bit of a different character, like a scholar. He wasn't an action hero in that, but he was also very charming and very funny in that one.
Yeah, he certainly was. I mean, it's one of those ones you wouldn't expect. I mean, comedy he was quite natural with, I thought, you know, and
Yeah.
I mean, he's done comedy, you know, before then as well, but. I mean, not to that point. I think he always thought himself as a serious actor, but alongside Harrison, he was perfectly cast as the father. Even though there's about only, I think, 12 years difference between the two of them, you know, it's not much different. For me, we've covered Sean on here before, folks, years ago, with a Lethal episode dedicated to Zardos, that bizarre science fiction thriller that he did years ago, where he runs around with a nappy and a Webley double automatic pistol. I mean, it's a bizarre film. It's
hold on. What did you call that he's wearing?
A nappy.
A nappy. Okay.
Yeah, well, it kind of looks like one because he's got that thing. He's got the straps, and it's holding him up, and it's like I don't know what else you could call it. It's always been called.
We have other terms. We have other terms like, you know, mankini, banana hammock, ball slinger. I mean, whatever you want to call it.
It's funny. I mean, it's got one of the most bizarre openings with a statue head of the Zardos god floating around, and then all of a sudden you see Sean taking shots at people with this big double automatic revolver thing that he's got. But it's a bizarre one, and one that Blair wanted to cover because he's got the Blu-ray. God bless him. It's out there. It's definitely out there.
So what you're saying is Blair wanted to watch that film in full HD for some reason.
He did indeed.
For me, I'm fine seeing that on SD only.
But I mean, we're also looking at Sean's done a lot of thrillers and action films in between the James Bond movies, which he enjoyed the first couple, but towards the end it got too fanciful, and he always laughed at Roger's movies, even though he and Roger were dear friends, obviously. And then he's somebody that's always been sort of a patriarch of that genre. But then he went into thrillers of his own design, and I think that's what made him such an iconic thing. He was always the Sean, no matter where we go. And
so I wanted to ask you two questions. First of all, what is your most famous Sean Connery role that you like? What movie is your favorite of his?
Oh, it has to go to Untouchables for me. Playing Malone, it's such a mentor role. Like, he had a lot of mentor roles. I think, particularly in the early '80s to '90s, that was his thing. The second is Rising Sun, playing John Crichton.
Interesting. Gotcha. Yeah, it's funny. He plays John Connor in that.
Oh, John Cotner, that's right. I'm thinking of the writer, Michael Crichton, that wrote the bloody book. Yeah. But yeah, it's John Connor, folks. He's going to save us against Skynet, folks.
Yeah.
Sean Connery. Come on, Shaberdain Systems Models 101, let's do it.
Yeah, and he was great as John Patrick Mason in The Rock. I just loved him and Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, I look back on The Rock, and there's always been this question: is that a Bond movie? Is that Bond, grumpy or older Bond? I mean,
he was thrown in jail later on, and they brought him out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what's with the long hair? It's a grunge thing.
So
there's some great ones.
We were talking about Sean Connery recently on Blood of Kings, and we had our Highlander podcast on the network. And I had we did two shows. One's out right now as of this recording. We got another one coming out here in November, celebrating Sean Connery. And one of the discussion came up was the movie Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves with Kevin Costner and that all-star cast, and who in their right mind did not cheer at the very end when Sean Connery made his cameo appearance.
Oh yeah, who would have thought that Sean would have jumped to that? But it's kind of like, again, he did Robin and Marion years ago, so it's kind of like coming full circle that he would play.
And he was King Arthur in First Night.
Yeah, he was too. Yeah, I keep forgetting that the Richard Gere one. I always get taken out of the movie when Richard Gere's on in that movie, even though I got to say he did pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fun movie, and that's what's interesting, folks. He hadn't really done anything other than those leads or mentor roles up until the Avengers. That's right. Now, we're not talking about the Marvel Avengers. We're talking about the British Avengers. And it's an interesting but funny movie where he plays a bad guy in a teddy suit.
Yeah.
Very strange movie.
Yeah, I saw it. I saw it maybe once when it originally came out, but yeah.
It's a hard watch, that one. It's not an easy one to go. Yeah, so I'm going to say, well, very, very sad to hear his passing, but from hearing from his family and stuff like that, it was unfortunate, but he was in pain at the time, so it's good to see that he's no longer in pain. But we're going to celebrate that here today. We're about to head into the pub here, of course, on the one, the only Lethal Mullet podcast. We're celebrating a science fiction film he did back in 1981, directed by Time Cop director Peter Hyams, and starring, of course, along with him, Peter Boyle and Francis Sternhagen. Now, this is an interesting movie. I did not realise it was a British movie. So there you go, folks. There's something new we didn't know about. As we segue into the pub. Alrighty, mate. Time to go down to the pub for a pint, chat, action movies and more. Here on the Lethal Mullet podcast. All right, welcome to the Lethal Pub, folks. Here we are, sitting back with a nice Canadian club. And what's your drink of choice today, there, Kev?
What's that? What am I drinking?
Yeah, what are you drinking in the pub today?
I'm sorry, I'm staying hydrated. It's water for me right now. I know it's not too exciting, but if I were though to have partake in some alcoholic spirits, it'd probably be my favorite drink, which is a beer. It is a black and tan, and that's with Guinness and Bass.
Guinness and Bass there, folks. There you go. So sliding down the bar as we speak is a nice cold water for our dear friend there. All right, folks, let's get into it. Outland is a 1981 British science fiction thriller written and directed by the one, the only Peter Hyams, who's always wanted to do a Western, but the Westerns weren't too popular at that time in the 1980s. So Vic got put into space, and you'll find out why very soon. Starring, of course, Sean Connery in the lead role alongside Peter Boyle and Francis Sternhagen. This is a movie that was produced by Roger Day Ruth and, of course, Stanley O'Toole. Now, this is an interesting movie, folks. This is one that, we've got Aliens just come out, we've had Star Wars, and then we've got this movie, which is a gritty thriller. It's a Western, but it's set in a space station. So it's a very interesting place to have it, and it's got a very interesting intro. So, before we get into it, Kev, when did you first see this movie?
Uh, I really can't remember exactly where it was. I want to say I think I saw it on regular broadcast television, and it was probably heavily edited. And then I kind of forgot about it for a little while, and then a buddy of mine might have been after I want to say one of his bigger movies came. It might have been after Last Crusade, and we're talking about Sean Connery films, and he's like, "Yeah, one of my favorites is Outland." I was like, "Outland? Oh, I think I remember that movie." And then we started talking about it, and I ended up I think renting it on video on VHS, and that's how I revisited it.
Nice, nice. I don't think I saw this till about the late 80s. Now, what I did know of Outland came from, and this is really interesting, Mad Magazine, believe it or not.
Huh.
There was a best of Mad Magazine, which the first satire at the front of it was Outland. So I looked at it and went, "Oh, I know that. That's going to be Sean Connery because the I think it was Mort Drucker, the famous Mad Magazine artist, did such a great thing with the faces. He accentuated so
Yeah.
much that you knew who it was. you know, like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mad Magazine was great for that. It's very iconic artist.
It's amazing, isn't it? Now, that satire, I looked through it and I'm kind of like, wow, this looks like Alien a bit. And I looked at it, I'm like, what? When did this movie come out? Never saw it again or anything mentioned of it till about 87, 88. And I remember seeing a VHS version of that. So I watched it and I really enjoyed it. Again, didn't see it again for about another 10 years until it came out on DVD.
It's funny you say this, because this has okay. Basically, this is a western in space, and it's
Hmm.
the parallels to 1954 Gary Cooper's High Noon is all over the place. Because it's basically
Yeah.
about a sheriff that is the only good sheriff, and he gets no help from deputies. Everyone's corrupt because of the company that runs this space station on near the moon Io, which is orbiting Jupiter, and people are sent to kill him basically. And it's funny you make the parallels to Alien because the sets look kind of like alien sets inside the ship, and
Hmm.
it has this kind of claustrophobic feel to it. The lighting in it, it's funny too because when you watch this too, it's such a sign of the times because like everyone's smoking in these close quarter areas.
Yep, yep.
It's so funny. But it has, and it was filmed in England in Pinewood Studios, like you had mentioned. But it's got that kind of space. Everything's dirty and worn.
Hmm.
It's not pristine, and you
Yeah.
can tell. And it's basically a blue collar colony space station that are mining titanium. But then there's this corruption going on because of this drug that's being used among people, and this corrupt foreman that's played by what's his name? Forgetting his name.
Peter Boyle. Oh, no, Stephen Burkoff.
Well, yeah, him too. He's the one that kind of goes crazy in this. I'm talking about Peter Boyle. Sorry.
Oh, Peter Boyle.
Um,
Sorry, yeah.
yeah, Peter Boyle. He was great in this film. But yeah, Burkoff. He plays the villain in Beverly Hills Cop, if I remember correctly. Yes. But yeah, it's just got a great kind of gritty feel to it, and it's got a lot. I mean, there's not a lot of action in it until the very end when he's trying to defend himself and the station when these assassins come to kill him. But the tension just starts building and building and building, and he's got this thing going on with his wife who decides to basically leave him with his child and go back to Earth early.
Yeah. It's an interesting story, and it's kind of, as you mentioned, towards the end, there's this sort of impending arrival of the mercenaries, or the bad guys, basically. And it's again, it's an interesting device because the ticking time bomb of the events just about to go, and he's trying to get everything ready to face off, and it's like the High Noon Western where you got these guys going up for the big quick draw. It's basically the same setting but in this space station. That's what I love about it. It really is. You've always said it because I remember you talking about this years ago. This one, how it's literally the best Western done, but it's in space. It's an
Yeah,
interesting way of putting it.
and I'm a proud owner of the original DVD release here in the States. Think it came out in '97 with those cardboard wraparound covers and that little clicking thing that the plastic does around the edge of it. And it's always been, it's not one of those films that gets a lot of attention when it comes to Sean Connery's library of work, and I think it's highly underrated. But one of the more interesting things about this movie that people don't really realize is Peter Hyam, the director. Outland was pioneering as the first motion picture to use introvision, which is a variation of front projection that allows foreground, midground, and background elements to be combined in the camera, as opposed to using optical processes such as blue screen matting. This enables characters to convincingly walk around miniature sets of the mine colony. Now, do you remember when we did Lethal Mullet? We were so excited to do Lethal Mullet for uh, Megaforce.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Oh, Introvision! Yes!
yes. Well, Outland was the first film in 1981, and then an '82 miniseries called Inside the Third Reich was the third one, or the second one. But the third movie was Megaforce to use this introvision thing. And Rambo 3 used it. Stand By Me used it. Lock Up, Driving Miss Daisy, Darkman, Army of Darkness, and The Fugitive in 1993 was the last one, at least notable here, that to use this cool introvision thing, which was a really cool special effect, basically. I don't know all of the technical details on how it was done, but instead of matte and blue screening, that's how they did it.
It's a really interesting way of sort of basically making a moving map that you're actually tracking in the camera straight away. And you can imagine if they had that technology to use on Return of the Jedi with the Battle of Endor, how much easier that would have been instead of putting. They had to reprint that film about 100 times to get the amount of ships doing, passes and stuff like that. Imagine just having that available right away to just put straight in the shot. It would have made
Yeah,
so much easier.
exactly. And I just want to mention one thing about trivia because it's related to this introvision that I thought was fascinating about this was that the writer director Peter Hyams handled the cinematography for most of this movie. Stephen Goldblatt was misleadingly hired by Hyams, who only wanted him to stand aside and do nothing, and to use him as a scapegoat for the production company in case anything went wrong while he was using the introvision process. And according to Goldblatt, he was furious at being lied to and wouldn't have taken the job if he'd known Hyams' intention on the outset. But he stayed on in order to learn how to use introvision. And because as a young cinematographer with a sole prior feature credit, quitting the movie would have ruined his career, but he did say it was the only one of his movies where he skipped the rat party because of it.
Yeah, he really got obviously, as you mentioned, like it was pretty. I'm gonna say it's pretty shitty of Peter Hyams to do that. Like he did it because of the unions in the UK. Like basically, you have a DP, you have to let them do their job. That's part of what they're hired for. But Peter Hyams is somebody that does it on every movie. He basically is the director of photography or cinematographer, depending on your definition of the word and the job, on his movies. He won't let anyone else do it. Even on Universal Soldier Regeneration, his son's movie, he refused to let his son be a DP and came in and actually DP'd for him.
Yeah, interesting.
Interesting, isn't it?
What,
All right.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, to you, do you think that's the best way of running a production?
It really depends on the situation. Everyone kind of has their own way, and it, you work with people that you want to work with, and sometimes when you work on a production, not all relationships are going to be ideal, and some do. I mean, obviously, through this film, he was able to have a relationship with Sean Connery, because then he went on to do 1988's The Presidio, which he was in that one as well. But I think that once you make a name for yourself, like most directors do, when you come onto a project, it's their way or the highway, and you have to accept that and do that. Otherwise, you do your own thing and go elsewhere.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's just what it is, I suppose. Now, folks, before we get into a bit of the plot, just to let you know who else is involved in this. Stuart Baird, the director, of course, of Star Trek Nemesis and many other things. And one of the greatest...
Also, Stuart Baird, quick shout out, one of the unsung heroes of Hollywood editing. Look at his editing jobs.
Mm-hmm.
He's come in and saved a crap load of films because he's master editor. And one of those films, Demolition Man.
Yes. I think I know somebody that might like that movie. I don't know. Like...
Yeah, he's like the go-to guy. If you need your film edited and fixed, you go to Stuart Baird.
Certainly is. Now, the music was done by the amazing late Jerry Goldsmith, who obviously did Alien and Star Trek and pretty much everything that wasn't John Williams, he's done.
Pretty much.
Now, this movie was also produced by the production company, the Ladd Company, run by Alan Ladd, who, with Warner Brothers, would also put together the Blade Runner movie with Ridley Scott only about a year after this.
Alan Ladd also is famous for giving Star Wars a chance and letting Lucas do his stuff.
100%, mate. 100%. Now, the budget of this film, shot in the UK, was an estimated 18 million, I guess, US dollars. It wouldn't be pound, that's for sure. But the box office takings was $1 million short at 700,000 short, 17,374, $595. Now, or as some US takings it, saying that it was 20 million back. So it could have made 2 million, but it just basically made back its budget, folks. So it's not a rip-roaring success. In its whole, this is set in IO, as Kev has mentioned, described mainly in, most critics have said, as a space western. And it resembles most the 1952 movie High Noon. But the film stars, obviously, Sean Connery as Federal Marshal William O'Neill, assigned to the outpost of Conam 27, operated by the Continental Amalgamated on the Jovian moon of Io. The conditions here are difficult. Gravity is about 1/6 of what it is on Earth. There's no breathable atmosphere, and this is why you see that great opening sequence with, obviously, the suits, which are steals from Alien, folks. I bet you didn't know that. That's right. It's the same suits used by the team on LV-426. That's right. Zeta Reticuli. There you go. And O'Neill is basically the main law on this part. The shifts are long, and of course, the general manager, Mark Shepard, keeps that the productivity has broken all records since taking over. So it's a successful mining operation there as well. This is the setup for, of course, what will be a very corrupt place that he's checking out. Corruption is running all through the system, thanks to, of course, the characters that we're about to meet here. And right through to the point where the Federal Marshal is the only clean person in there that wants to bring back balance. But there's corruption on every corner. Drugs rampant, and, of course, an impending doom of mercenaries on his tail. This is the perfect Western in space. Kev, do you reckon that pretty much wraps up what this movie is about?
Yeah, definitely. And it's like I said, it's very reminiscent of High Noon with its own take in space, and it's tense like that as well, and as High Noon was, but it has a whole new look and character onto its own, like I mentioned earlier about the sets and the setting and such. But what I'm kind of curious about, and I wanted to ask you if you don't mind, is that the studio was saying to Peter Hyams, because Hyams wanted to direct a Western, but he said, no, no
Hmm.
one's watching Westerns right now. And so this movie came out in 81. I think the movie that really kind of said, oh, it's okay to make Westerns again is Silverado, which came out in
Hmm.
85. But what
Yeah.
I'm curious is if he did get the green light to do an actual Western, would it have been a similar type of thing, and also would Sean Connery have been in it?
It's interesting because I think Sean had already done a western previous to this in the late '60s or early '70s called Shando, if I remember right. So he's had sort of a taste of it. But Sean could definitely do a Daniel Craig like Cowboys and Aliens character, like just a mysterious guy who's just got the skills, can twirl that revolver around and basically be the fastest gun out there. I mean, it's in Sean's blood to do that. He could definitely pull that off. But is Peter Hyams the right guy to do a western? I think he's more suited to sci-fi. My thoughts.
Yeah, he definitely has a niche with that, doing 2010, of course, and one of my favorite Van Damme films, Time Cop. And
Hmm.
also, he did Schwarzenegger's End of
Sudden
Days.
death.
Yeah. Wait, what? Sudden Death, is that one of your favorites?
Yes, I bet. I like it for what it is. I've just watched the Michael Jai White Sudden Death that's come out, and that's even better.
And of course, he also did Capricorn 1. But the one
Hmm.
film that Peter Hyams did that's extremely underrated and not a lot of people have seen it, and I love it, is the World War II era film Hanover Street, 1979, starring Harrison Ford and Christopher Plummer.
Ah, what's this one about?
It takes place in World War II, and he's a American bomber stationed in England, and he
Hmm.
starts up a relationship with a British woman, and it's about him going on these bombing runs, whether or not he's going to come back or not. I think he gets shot down as well, and
Hmm.
it's a really good film that shows you World War II, but it's also a really cool love story too. Very
Nice,
underrated
nice.
film. Yeah.
I've seen that around, just never watched it. I'll have to check it out. But what we will check out, folks, is the cast. So Sean plays, of course, Marshal William T. O'Neill from Scotland. And we've also got Peter Boyle playing Mark Sheppard. Now, is that an actor we know now? Mark Sheppard from Battlestar Galactica and other things, the British guy. Anyway, but Peter
Yeah.
Boyle plays Mark. He's quite good in it, actually. Like, he's likable. That's where I think a lot of corruptions comes from, the fact that they got charisma, mate.
Yeah, and he's the one that has the power. He's the one that is that keeps, he's the foreman, the guy that keeps check of all the people that work there. He has his hands in everything. And so when Sean Connery's character Marshal William T. O'Neill comes brand new on the scene to do his tour as Marshal, Peter Boyle's character kind of says, in so many ways, don't get in our way.
Now, I hope Kev doesn't mind. With the rest of this cast list, I'm going to kick up the Aussie to 10. So here we go, folks. Bear with me just for the cast. Next up, the roles Francis Sternhagen as Dr. Marion Lazarus. And we got also Kika Markham as Carolyn O'Neill. And of course, we've got Nicky Barnes as Paul O'Neill. And we've got Clark Peters as Sergeant Baylard. We've got Stephen Burkoff as Sagan. What a name, mate. Sounds like a computer game. No. And we've got John Ratzenberger from Cheers as Tarlo. Now,
Also
that's
from
actually
Empire
pretty.
Strikes Back.
That's right. And along with him is the Star Wars actor also, Angus McInnes as Hughes. There you go.
Yep.
Now, did you know there's a Dune member in this cast? A lot of people don't know it, but he's here. With moustache and all, that is, of course, P.H. Moriarty. That is, of course, a member of the Sci-Fi Channel Dune miniseries. And he plays the first hitman that comes through, along with Doug
Yes.
Robertson as hitman number 2. He's also in Patriot Games for the guy that gets Sean Bean into the courtroom and throws him in the seat, and he goes, "No, sit down." What a cast! It's actually a pretty damn good cast. What do you reckon?
It is definitely. It's really well put together cast, and when you watch this film, you definitely feel that every actor has consumed their role. And one of my favorites, next to Peter Boyle's villain of the movie, you could say, but I love Francis Sternhagen as Dr. Lazarus, who is his only ally when it comes to being alone on this. Station with everyone against him and assassins coming for him.
That's right, because he's got no money penny in this or M. You know, he's by himself pretty much. He has to rely on his own skills.
Yep, that and a few shotguns.
Yeah. Actually, yeah. I'll tell you what, this movie's known for shotguns, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But here's something interesting that Hines recalled. He said, "I wanted to do a Western. Everybody said you can't do a Western. Westerns are dead. Nobody will do a Western. And I remember thinking it was weird that this genre endured for so long was just gone. But then I woke up and came to the conclusion, obviously after other people, that it was actually alive and well but in outer space. I want to make a film about the frontier. Not the wonder of the glamour of it, but I want to do something about Dodge City and how life was. I wrote it, and by great fortune, Sean Connery wanted to do it. And how many chances did you get to work with Sean Connery? The film was developed at Universal by Hines and producer Richard Routh." There you go.
I just want to say you're a little off on his accent. You did a southern accent of some type. He's actually from New York area, so yeah.
There you go. That's our Aussie interpretation, and we've got no idea about the right accent. Sorry there, Mr. Himes. Now, the film was shot in Pinewood Studios. Obviously, it's a very well-known place for everything from the Bonds to all over the place. But what's great about it is, like it's such a well-staffed place for crews. Like there's always professional crews working there. Pretty much every week there's a new production, so that's what's huge. The working title of the movie was Io, and the setting of the film. It was later changed because many people read it was 10 or low on the production. And it can kind of see that, like even in science, I went, "Oh, is that 10?" I remember saying that in science class, looking at, "Oh, it's planet 10 in Jupiter." But the photography took place principally from May 1980 to June 1980. The post-production was finished in 1981 in February. So there's not a lot of time for this movie to get out what it needed to do. But I can kind of see there's only so many sets in this film. It kind of reminds me of that 2009 Doug Jones film. Was it the director of Warcraft did? Moon, which is kind of similar. There's only so many sets. And actually, I've got to say, Moon's similar ending, where there's the impending arrival of the company. And the character that Sam Rockwell plays, has to literally do like Sean, get the hell out of there.
I have not seen Moon, so I'll take your word for it.
I think you'd actually like it. It's an interesting movie, so I will not spoil the story any further.
I have heard good things about it, especially I'm a Sam Rockwell fan, so I'm sure I would like it.
The best thing about it is the level of CGI in it is about 40% to 60% miniatures.
What I find interesting about this movie Outland's released, it was released in May of 1981. The following month, in June of 81, was a little film called Raiders of the Lost Ark. And 2 more sequels later, he would become part of it.
You wonder, they're so close together, whether they may have run productions right up to against each other there. Like it's 81, so it's only around the corner when you think about it. So the music, obviously, is conducted and composed by the legendary Jerry Goldsmith, who worked with Peter Hyams on Capricorn 1 and obviously done Alien and Star Trek as well. And what's interesting is that, I think there's not, it's particularly with Jerry Goldsmith, he's known for such variety, whereas I think John Williams is so synonymous with certain franchises. Obviously, Indiana Jones and Jaws, and a lot of Spielberg product as well as George Lucas himself. But I kind of look at this. Jerry Goldsmith might be a little bit more versatile. Do you think?
There's a lot of people that would agree with you, and it's so funny. It's like you got at the top tier of composers, you got John Williams. A lot of people, and like myself, would agree that I think right there next to him, if not below him, right there is Jerry Goldsmith, and his iconic soundtracks and scores are just so many and are legendary. And he's got a very diverse approach to each film, where some people might say that John Williams might kind of sound similar in certain films, kind of plagiarizing himself to a certain degree, where Goldsmith really brings it in each individual film that he does.
Very much so, and I think that's a big part of it. Now, we're going to quickly segue into the guns here, so I need a certain member of our cast here today to do his little bit. Lock and load, folks, here we go, chatting about the firearms in this here film with the one, the only, Kevin the RaiderNerd, right? So,
Guns. Everybody's got a gun.
That's right, everybody but Sean Connery, folks. That's right. Now, there's only one gun in this entire movie, and it is a very cool gun, so we're going to get onto it. Now, Peter Hyams had thought about putting laser guns in this and putting other things, but in this one, we only have the Browning 2000 12-gauge shotgun. And you got to say, it's a pretty beastie weapon, Kev.
It is, definitely, and they use a sawed-off, cut-down version where they cut the stock off, so they make them more compact. And I guess that kind of makes sense when you think about their setting, because they're in a very constrictive locations and small corridors and stuff. You don't want these big, long-barreled shotguns. And then the assassins have similar ones, but have these kind of scopes that make them look a little more kind of futuristic and scary looking. Although a scope on a shotgun really doesn't make much sense.
No, I mean, the thing is, the thing's going to spray anyway. Now, I mean, for those that don't know, shotguns have a projectile, but it's got a lot of what they call shot in it. So it's unlike a bullet, which goes straight ahead out through the rifling and hits its target. This sprays out, and a lot of shot can hit a multitude of areas. I mean, how wide does a shotgun blast, mate?
It depends on the shell that you're using. If you're using a certain there are different types of buckshot, which are little individual balls inside the shotgun shell that spread out. There's single load, like big buckshot inside there, where there's only like a few of them, and then there's just like the single big bullet itself. It depends on the shotgun shell itself. But I think this particular one, the Browning 2000, is a semi-automatic shotgun where you don't have to pump it. Each time you pull the trigger, it fires, because there's a specific scene where you see Connery as the sheriff down on the ground shooting up while he's hiding underneath a table, and you see him shoot off about 3 or 4 rounds without having to use the pump action. So I think those are the semi-automatic version of these Browning shotguns.
Yeah, and again, it's a terrifying weapon. I mean, at the end of it, you can't do a hostage situation with a shotgun, because, I mean, you got to kill the other person as well as the target.
The thing that makes it terrifying, though, to be perfectly honest with you, is they're using shotguns inside a space station. If you look at Total Recall, they had to be very careful about not shooting certain walls and windows, otherwise you'd be decompressed and thrown out into space. So I don't know if these shotguns use a special type of space round to where they don't travel too far, and once they hit something, they don't travel through it, So I don't know. I just thought it was funny that shotguns were being used inside a space station.
It's a good point. Like, how many movies have we seen where basically it ruptures the lighting in the war space, and then the air starts getting sucked out, can't recycle it then, and of course
I think these, it saves on the budget, but I think these weapons were used, not to make it seem like it was a current day shotgun, more of a futuristic version that would be more apt to this type of setting.
And let's face it, shotguns don't change that much. I mean, even your Remingtons and your Mossbergs haven't really changed for probably about 30 or 40 years.
No, they pretty much give the same amount of punch. Just some of the newer ones maybe shoot more.
Yeah. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, that's
Right.
one of those old things, adages,
A
I'm
shotgun
gonna
is usually a shotgun is basically a short distance weapon. You use it to shoot things within like 20 feet.
Yeah, short range, mate. Short range.
Yeah.
I mean, there's also those games that they play out in the ranges where they shoot the clay pigeon out, and you got to
Yes.
blast them with a shotgun. And of course, if you follow Frank Stallone, folks, that's Sylvester's brother, the singer and lounge singer, guitarist. He is synonymous with Beretta shotguns, so he actually does clay pigeon shooting as a hobby, and he uses the over and under shotgun. That's fires 2 shots, and you basically fire
those are
those.
also used. Those are also used for hunting too, like quail and stuff like that. Yeah.
So again, there's all different types of shotguns out there, and I think with this it worked. I mean, it's a little bit like Blade Runner. They tried to go all out and find some laser gun before they settled on the Blade Runner blaster that we know Deckard using, and I think it's very similar here. They've tried it and it just didn't feel right.
What's
I think
interesting though is when you look at the cover, the poster of Outland, or the DVD cover, or the home video
Mhm.
cover, whatever it is, he's not holding one of those compact shotguns. He's holding a more traditional, longer barreled shotgun that looks like a pump shotgun, which I
Mhm.
find interesting. But the thing that's kind of cool about it is that the shotgun lends to a Western feel, because
Yes.
that was one of the main weapons that have been used in the West. Mostly it was the double-barreled shotgun, something like that. But it definitely gives it that, even though it's set in space, it lets you know it's a space western.
It certainly does. Now, folks, before we wrap, we've got to talk about our favourite scenes and give this film a rating. I'm going to start with you, Kev. What's your favourite scene, and where does this sit on the Hallenbach scale out of 5?
Oh man, I gotta give it to the ending scene when he is being hunted by the assassins, because the tension leading up to it is fantastic,
Mm-hmm.
especially with the workers, everyone that's abandoned him, and Peter Boyle and his men, and but then you have Dr. Lazarus secretly helping him, but trying to stay um, out of, you know, letting anyone else know that she is helping him. And
Yeah.
especially when that one, I think it's Officer Ballard, who's one of the corrupt police officers, tries to kill him at the end. She is cornered by him asking where the sheriff is. And in a way, she doesn't lie to him. She just says, "Yeah, I think he's out here or over there or something." And he's like, "Can you tell me exactly where?" She's like, "He didn't tell me. I don't know." And so she kind of sends him to another area that he's not, so he can kind of come back around and get him. But it's not a lot of people in the end, but it's very, very intense, and you're just curious on how, when he runs out of bullets, how he finds other ways to kill these guys.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And I think that's the thing, is it's a bit of problem solving on his part to try and figure out how. And that's why I've got to say it's probably my favourite scene. I do like the opening because, I
Yes.
mean, the corner back to Alien, but it's not as strong as that ending and the impending doom of these assassins being called in to fix the problem with the marshal. I love that. It's the bounty hunters, it's the bounty killings in the West. It's that sort of atmosphere. Where does this fit in the pantheon of Western gunfights? That's sort of where it fits for me.
Steven Burkoff going crazy is always a good scene as well, when he's got the woman, he's got the knife. and he's barricaded himself inside those quarters. That's a good scene too, because you get a little bit of Sean Connery's character doing his job as the new marshal, doing the best that he can. And so that's a good scene there. But on the Hollenbach scale, I'm going to give it a good. I'm going to give it a good. I'd say a 4 out of 5. I think.
That's actually really fair. You've got to say, I can't fault that. It's probably a 4 for me too. It's a movie that kind of, on the outset could have been just a B grade, science fiction one. But what really lends itself to a little bit more gravitas is not only Sean, but the work by Burkoff and Boyle in this, and Sternhagen, is top notch. It brings you in, it sucks you in, and you really feel for the marshal at the end. You feel like, hey, he might not get out of this. And that's what brings it a 4 out of 5 for me too. Just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. All right, so we're going to leave you very, very soon here, folks, and give you a nice big fat promo. This is the promo that covers all the shows, so definitely check it out. And, of course, Kev is covering all the shows in that promo, so go and check it out. You might find something you like. But I want to thank Kev for joining us here today. Celebrate the first of our shows here, looking at Sean Connery. You'll be able to check out more, not only on this show, but Couch Potato Theatre and others. But stay tuned for Hunt for Red October and a few others here too. But Kev, it's always good to chat about Sean, isn't it?
It is. I appreciate you having me come on to celebrate Sean Connery. He's a huge loss to us in fandom. He's not only a fantastic movie star, but he's a Hollywood legend and icon, and he has an extensive list of wonderful films, and it's been interesting to go back and look at other stuff that he's did that I haven't seen, and I plan on doing just that. But I did revisit Dr. No, his first go as James Bond, and he was just so good in that.
Oh, he's brilliant in that too. So stay tuned, folks.
Having me, sir.
As always, it's a pleasure, buddy, and we'll do more of these for sure. But stay tuned for RaiderNerd to join us, also for Tom Selleck's Runaway, and of course Quigley Down Under very, very soon. And we will be doing, they're a little bit delayed, folks, but we will do them soon, Magnum, the TV series as well, which hopefully will get the whole crowd on. I think that's one that will be a lot of fun for all of us to chat about.
Great TV series. I remember watching that with my dad.
It's a lot of fun. Same. Oh, my dad loved that series. And the car. The car was pretty cool, wasn't it?
Oh, the Ferrari? Oh, yeah. Gosh, yeah.
Yeah. And good old Boss Higgins. Good old Higgins there as well. He was always good in that show too. So stay tuned for that, folks. We'll let you know all about that. But that's enough for me and for Kev. We'll catch you next time. We're here on the Lethal Mullet every Monday on FPN. Check us out at the Lethal Mullet, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We'll catch you next time here on the Lethal Mullet. G'day, folks. Hope you're enjoying the great shows here on the Phantom Podcast Network. Be sure to check out all the great shows that we have on offer and subscribe on the master feed at fpnet.podbean.com. You can check Blood of Kings, a Highlander podcast hosted by Kevin the RaiderNerd Russell and Lee Fillingsness on their platform. You can also check out Culture Clash, which is the weekly look at pop culture hosted by Kevin and Kyle. Couch Potato Theatre. This is a cult classics and guilty pleasure podcast. Also Time Warp, a fandom flashback show. End Zone, a look at the NFL, American football. Also Good Evening, an Alfred Hitchcock podcast, looking at the great films of Alfred Hitchcock. Union Federation podcast, a Star Trek and Orville podcast, looking at Discovery and of course Picard, plus the Orville. Also the Hair Metal podcast, looking at the great shows put on by the amazing bands back in the late 80s, their discs, their LPs, everything, all covering the fashion as well, hosted by Kevin the RaiderNerd Reitzel. You can also check out Type 40, a Doctor Who podcast, hosted by Kevin and Dan Hadley, looking at all the eras of Doctor Who. You can also catch out What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast, an amazing show looking at Star Wars, hosted by Derek and Scott. And of course our newest one, the amazing The Mullet Guild, an offshoot of the Lethal Mullet podcast looking at Frank Herbert's Dune universe. This is like an encyclopedia for Dune, where I take you through and down into the rabbit hole of Frank Herbert's amazing space opera, the sprawling universe which is going to be brought to life by Denis Villeneuve and December 18. You can check out all the shows there. Be sure to also go onto the social platforms on Twitter at FanPod Network. Let us know what you think of the shows and what else you can look at there. You can also check out great articles that we put up to there that we share. Also check out on Instagram and Facebook, Phantom Podcast Network. Be sure to make sure that every Tuesday you check out the great work done by Making Treks as well. A brand new podcast looking at a deep dive of Star Trek, hosted by myself, James Semple, and of course the ever popular and amazing writer of Star Trek and Star Wars, Mark Newbold. Go and check it out, folks, and we'll catch you next time here on the Phantom Podcast Network's The Lethal Mullet Podcast. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.